communication is the language of leaders. James Hughes, an American presidential speechwriter, said that, and I absolutely agree. Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting us to be part of this communication workshop. I'm honored to address you today and share the knowledge and experiences I've had as NGCP spokesperson and head of its corporate communications and public affairs department. As some of you may know, I am not a PR professional. I'm a lawyer by profession. I was literally thrust into the field of public relations and communications when, after working in NGCP's legal department as Deputy General Counsel for Administrative and Regulatory Matters for a year, my bosses decided that they wanted to appoint a spokesperson, preferably with a legal background and female. I don't really understand it, but back then, in 2010, uso yung spokesperson na babae and abogado. So, I don't understand that trend, but that's what brought me here. Lady lawyer spokesperson. I was afraid, to be honest, but I was also challenged. I could never say no to my bosses, and my can-do attitude drove me to take the bull by the horns and accept the position in spite of my worries and insecurities. Surprisingly, the transition was easy. Although I wasn't a communications major in college, and the extent of my training in public relations was via seminars and symposia I attended, the training of a lawyer helped me in my new field. Why? Because lawyers are also known as advocates. We push the case of a client before a judge. In the PR world, it's basically the same thing. PR professionals, like you, push the message of your institution, your cities, your LGUs, your municipalities, not before a judge, but before the court of public opinion. So it's the same thing, and I found the transition very, very easy. Public relations, as I'm sure you all know, is a very challenging field. This difficulty in my case is magnified many times over when you're doing it for a newly privatized transmission business whose checkered background includes government-run facilities, a congressional franchise, and the gargantuan task of operating, managing, and maintaining the country's national power grid. Now more than ever, communications in achieving your goals, specifically your municipalities or cities' goals, is being underscored. An effective communications program not only manages reputation, it drives thoughts, it creates opinions, it builds and expands your business unit. It is an effective tool to address the company's operational needs, and in the process, it also addresses the biggest concerns of your stakeholders or your constituents. Communications is an integral but oftentimes neglected aspect in any undertaking. Bernard Shaw, a famous Irish playwright, once said, the single biggest communication problem is the illusion that it has taken place. This is the biggest mistake that many executives and officers commit, that once words are said, communication has automatically taken place. Many companies and executives that assume that effective communication comes naturally because everybody should know how to do it. Everybody can speak. Everybody can understand words, phrases, and sentences. But they couldn't be any more wrong. A good communication strategy is one that can make the most complex and complicated concept and idea so simple and easy to understand that a 6-year-old can grasp it. It makes ideas and concepts sound so reasonable that a contrary view or a contrary opinion just seems ridiculous. So, communications is definitely more than just speaking and understanding the meaning of words and phrases. It is an art. Yes, it's the art of bridging the gap between the speaker and its audience so that one brings the other into its world and they both see issues, crises, topics from the same unified perspective. Journalist Sidney J. Harris said it best when he said, the two words, information and communication, are often used interchangeably, but they signify quite different things. Information is giving out. Communication is getting through. At its best, we've seen companies survive catastrophic public relations incidents with the right combination of corporate action, statements, and media appearances. Take the case of Tylenol. In the early 80s, Tylenol was a top painkiller brand in the United States. Everyone was taking it. May headache, they take Tylenol. In 1982, someone maliciously replaced some Tylenol capsules with those filled with poisonous cyanide. 7 people, a 12-year-old among them, who had ingested the tampered products unknowingly, died a horrible, painful death. How did the company react? With a strong communications plan that enabled the brand to survive and even recover from the tragedy. The company addressed the issue transparently. Instead of avoiding the media, they used the media to warn the public of the problem and advise them to stop drinking Tylenol until a full investigation has been completed, which is contrary to our instinct. No? If something goes wrong, we try to hide it, sweep it under the rug. But in most cases, especially when the public is involved, as with both our jobs, no? That is the worst thing you can possibly do. So Tylenol did it right by using media instead of hiding from it. Also, in terms of operations, the company withdrew all Tylenol products from the entire United States, even if the tampering was only isolated to the Chicago area. They didn't have to do this, but again, in a stroke of PR genius, they decided to withdraw everything from all markets in the United States so that they will show the people that they're not interested in profit, but care for the safety of the public. And also, within 6 months of the incident, they introduced a triple safety packaging system and made sure that the public, through the media, was made aware of this new development in the packaging. These and a series of other right moves put Tylenol back on track. It not only recovered its reputation of a safe and over-the-counter brand, but remains to this day one of the most trusted painkiller brands in the United States despite that cyanide tragedy. On the other side of the spectrum, we've also seen how companies can fall without a comprehensive communications plan, especially in times of crises. Take the case of Exxon Valdez oil spill of 1989. This is one of those cases every communications PR relations professional always reads about, this Exxon Valdez tanker. Exxon Valdez was a large oil tanker carrying almost 32 million gallons of oil across the ocean. Tragically, this tanker met with an accident and spilled its oil along the Alaskan coastline. It was an environmental crisis of the greatest proportions. But, unlike Tylenol, instead of being proactive in its response, Exxon hid from the public. It came out with a print advertisement admitting to the issue 10 days after the tragedy. And the CEO only made a public appearance in the locality 2 weeks after the accident happened. They also limited communications to the affected areas of Alaska and ignored the rest of the world who already knew about the issue. This negative perception of the company and its seeming apathy to the crisis eventually led the U.S. courts awarding victims almost $1 billion in damages. So that PR mistake had a cost, $1 billion US. So it's clear what you do and what you say, specifically how you do it, how you say it, and who's watching and who's listening when you act and speak will determine whether you will survive a crisis or succumb to it. But we shouldn't have to wait for a crisis to test our communication skills. We must be proactive and build a good communications plan to lay the right foundation so that when we do have to activate our crisis communications plan, we will have laid a strong foundation to build on. There are 3 aspects that we should strengthen to build and sustain the company's good or the LGUs good reputation. Allow me to share with you these three aspects and how we applied it to NGCP. First, create awareness. Despite taking over the operations of a decades-old transmission business, NGCP had to start from scratch to introduce itself to the public. One of the major challenges our company had to face, and is still facing, is to distinguish NGCP as a private company which operates separately and independently from the National Power Corporation, or NAPOCOR, and the National Transmission Corporation, or TRANSCO. I remember the first few days we were doing power seminars, of which you will experience later on. It was very frustrating for people to assume that NGCP was a government company, and it did not help that the name of the company sounded very government. National Grid Corporation of the Philippines. Very, very, very government. Very few people understood that we were a private company. Nobody knew us. People still confused us with NAPOCOR again, and thought that we were selling and buying electricity, and if there was any problem with their electricity, it was NGCP who could provide you with the answers. I think the problem with that happened when EPIRA was passed. Nobody really bothered to explain to the public what EPIRA was and how it would affect the power industry. And it really turned the power industry on its heels. It was unrecognizable after EPIRA passed. And we were, quote-unquote, one of the victims of that lack of information. So we had to remedy that. Communication played a big role in reintroducing the company to the public. Our team used a bottom-up approach to present NGCP. We went around the different provinces and conducted power seminars, which we will have after this. To give our target audience, which is the media and the local governments, the basics of the power industry before and after EPIRA. Again, I remember one of the first few government officers, information officers I met was someone from the PIA. And this person, who was a regional head, didn't know that we were private. So then, I told myself, wow, the lack of information runs deep because government itself didn't know what happened in Congress in 2002. And I said, I have my work cut out for me. So, we gave everyone the basics of the power industry before and after EPIRA. During these seminars, we told the story of NGCP, where we started, where we came from, what we do, and what we stand for as a corporation. We also help people understand the basic terms that they may hear or that they may encounter whenever we release statements about the power situation. In that way, that was our way of ensuring that when we spoke, we were speaking the same language, because nuances, regional usage, etc., could make a difference. One example I'll give you is the usage of brownout. I only found this out when I was working already for NGCP. When we refer to the term brownout, that just means any loss of power to the layperson. Apparently, there is a technical definition for brownout. Technically, brownout means low voltage, which means if you have low voltage, the incandescent bulbs before the CFLs and the LED lights, the incandescent bulbs, pag low voltage, they turn brown. So there's less illumination in the bulbs. Therefore, brownout doesn't mean loss of power. It means bad voltage. So again, communications in this sense, usage had changed the meaning of the word. But if you're talking to a technical person, an engineer in the power industry, you're not gonna get your message across because you're speaking a different language. So that was one of the things we tried to do with our power seminars, get everyone on the same page. So we introduced NGCP, and simultaneously, we built our network of local media and local government contacts who proved to be very helpful partners in disseminating our messages, official statements, and advocacies. I'd like to repeat, ma'am, your words. The media, the local media and local government information officers are integral to our work in NGCP communications because you are the extension of our voice. When we speak, we only have maybe one or two audience listening. But through you, we can magnify our voice. You can give us feedback, and you can give our feedback back to your constituents. So through you, we are able to magnify our efforts. So our relationship, our partnership is very important to NGCP. So slowly, we inched our way to be known in the provinces. After more than 200 power seminars all over the country, we hope that we have established NGCP's identity as the country's sole transmission network operator, a private company running government assets, with a 25-year concession agreement extendable for another 25 years, and a 50-year congressional franchise under RA 9511. But the work is far from done. In the coming months, you will see us take a further step to establish NGCP as a private company with a deeply rooted sense of public service, helping to build the economy and drive progress on the back of a strong and powerful transmission network. The second function of communication is to establish credibility. Even if the public is aware of your company or your LGU or your local executives, if they do not believe a word you are saying, then all your efforts are futile. Your reputation and integrity are everything. Follow through with what you're going to do, and your credibility can only be built over time, and it is built on the history of your words and actions. Those are the words of a hotel executive, Maria Razumek Zek, and it rings true for all of us. So communications is more than just spin. It's more than just tweaking the angle of a story or of information. It has to be done with integrity, and it has to be done with credibility, because like the boy who cried wolf, if you provide false information often enough, nobody will listen. So that's what we would like to emphasize, that use your communications plan to establish credibility. The publicity we gain from interacting and building good relationships with media and the LGUs through our power seminars was put to good use in disseminating information about the company. Our media partners, who previously did not even know who we were and that we existed, began to allow us some airtime and ad space to make our presence felt and our messages heard. They began calling us for comments. Dati hindi kami kilala. They didn't know us. But now they were asking us for our comments on an issue before printing story. Our promise then to all media was LGU information officers as well, was that we would be consistent and forthcoming in our releases, admitting power interruptions when it was transmission caused. And because our advisories were reliable, they were frequently picked up and mentioned in the news. Over the years, the public began to recognize NGCP as a company that not only provides practical and useful information, but it is also transparent in its operations. We successfully associated ourselves with accurate and reliable public service announcements that people began to rely on us, specifically our online presence and our regional communications officers, to get information. Many times, when other industry members kept quiet on a particular power-related issue, people resorted to NGCP because it had kept its promise of providing information relative to the grid whenever asked. It was always something I told my corporate communications officer, that even if your response is late, always respond. Because people need someone to talk to. And if people are ignored, you will lose some credibility. You will lose some goodwill. Media, so it became this, no? From an entity that people did not even know existed, we became the go-to for information. Media would call us if there are power interruptions, even if it was not transmission related. LGU officials also would ask us for schedules of transmission line maintenance that might affect their municipalities. Our employees would be invited as resource persons to present power situations. Even national government officials relied on us for information because we made it available to them when they needed it. Our executives have become thought leaders in the power industry. I remember in 2010 when I started, I was given very lean staffing and no regional presence. So I only had a couple of people in the head office to do the work for the entire country. One of the first things that happened, I came into the public relations group in June of 2010. And by October 2010, a large storm had hit North Luzon. Our lines there are configured in such a way that if this line is down, there are 4 or 5 provinces that have completely no power. So I remember in the first year or so, because I had no regional presence, I had to act as spokesperson for every single province that was affected by every single storm that passed through the country for that 1 or 2 years in the beginning. And I was waking up and I was trying to get information on all these lines. We run 20,000 circuit kilometers of lines. Ang dami na, that's a lot. But I had to struggle with finding information on each of them because I wanted NGCP to establish its reputation as reliable. That if you call us or our representative, someone will pick up. Sometimes, especially during Yolanda, when that huge storm hit, I got literally hundreds of texts. At 2 a.m. in the morning, I would respond to each one with a canned response of the situation. But I made sure to respond to each one so that they know that when I release the telephone number you may call, there is somebody at the end of that telephone number. Because there's nothing more frustrating than a company announcing a public service hotline and nobody responds. I draw on this from my experience as a consumer like you. If you're going to release a number, make sure somebody will respond. So that was the commitment that the corporate communications very early on gave the public and that we continue to give you today. But our message had to be backed up with good corporate performance. And I'm proud to say that in almost 7 years that we've been operating the power grid, we vastly improved transmission services in all corners of the country. That's thanks to the technical group well represented today. We are continually improving our services with projects to enhance grid operations and expand the existing network. We are upgrading, building, improving, and expanding the network we were given, all in the name of public service. So all I wanted to say here is, it can't just all be words. It has to be backed up by action. Again, if it's all spin, if it's all palamuti or decorative words and language, but you can't back it up with deeds by your LGUs, then there's nothing for you to communicate and you will just be a charlatan. Somebody who talks and talks and talks without backing up the words with actions. So, partnered with accurate and transparent information and competent employees, NGCP was able to establish a level of credibility that continues to contribute to its positive reputation. So the last function that I want to discuss is changing behavior. As much as communication is part of influencing opinion, it is also an effective tool in changing behavior. Our goal in NGCP is to keep our lines as reliable and as secure as possible so that we can all enjoy uninterrupted power transmission service. However, we are only one company in an industry with as many stakeholders as there are power users. Our goal cannot be attained if we do not get the cooperation, the buy-in of the public in keeping our lines safe and free from malicious and destructive acts. NGCP of late has been very outspoken in its campaign for transmission line safety, right-of-way, and security. For the past 7 years, the company has persistently reminded the public of the dangers of breaching transmission line safety clearances and how important it is to respect right-of-way. At the onset, we targeted our communication efforts to the media and local government officials because they are the closest to our target audiences, which is everyone who uses electricity. They are not only part of that public, they are also instrumental in molding public opinion. Recently, we expanded our communications efforts to the grassroots by launching a barangay-level safety campaign. We also moved upwards, entering into agreements with the National Telecommunications and the Movie and Television Review and Classification Board, or the MTRCB, to air our safety material in local cable community channels and movie theaters to expand the depth and breadth of our campaign. We hope to instill the sense of stewardship or malasakit over the transmission facilities, one community at a time, one viewer at a time. We want people to know that these are privately run public assets that all of us together with our own or are invested in the transmission facilities. In summary, communication is not merely a program or a department in a company. It is part of the company's culture and essence. And companies should be able to take advantage of communication to create awareness, establish credibility, change behavior to attain your vision. Taking off for what was said earlier, ma'am, that the PIA is the information arm of the government, but you were not frontliners. But you should be. You are the reputation managers of government, the PIA and all the information officers. You should be relevant. You should be frontliners. Because you are the opinion drivers. What you say will dictate how the public will what you say and how you say it and when you say it will mold the opinion of the public, will drive how the public sees any action taken by the government. So you should be frontliners. You must insist on increased relevance because information dissemination is only the foundation, but not the end-all and be-all of your work. In the age of communications, where the expediency of the click of a single post or share button and the thought of one person in the remotest corner of the world can be broadcast instantly to the entire online community, your role as information officers finds increasing relevance. I remember sometime earlier this year, I got a call from a cabinet secretary who I have great respect for. And there was a problem with the power, and former President Aquino wanted to have insight on the grid situation. And again, this call was made to me because we had established ourselves as a reliable source of information. But before we hung up, that cabinet secretary told me, you should stop calling yourself as a communications officer or a spokesperson. You're a reputation manager because that's how important your job is. You must find a way to move away from the thought that your job is merely to provide information. You must move towards being communications experts. Which then brings me back to the words of Sydney Harris that I quoted earlier. And I hope that you all keep this in mind when you do your work. Information and communication are always used interchangeably, but they are very, very, very different things. Information is giving out, mouthing words, parroting facts. Communication is getting through, planting an idea, influencing opinion. To end this, I'm going to quote another communications guru, Mr. Tony Robbins, who is a well-known author of many popular self-help books. He said, to effectively communicate, we must realize that we are all different in the way that we perceive the world. We have different perspectives. And we must use this understanding that we are different and coming from different directions as a guide to communicate with others. So it's not just one way. Communications is a give and take. There is outward and inward. And knowing this, You should build your communication strategy with that knowledge. I hope that in the next 3 days, you will all learn a little something about communicating more effectively to create awareness of your advocacies, establish credibility of your institutions, and change the behavior of your audience. And with that, I wish you all good luck and thank you for listening.